How the U.S. made affordable homes illegal. Exclusionary zoning laws that limit the kinds of housing that can be built in many communities are a major contributing factor to the growing crisis of affordable housing in the United States. These laws essentially make affordable housing illegal in many desirable areas because they frequently favor single-family homes while restricting or outright banning multifamily buildings. In this video, we will address this issue in detail. Number 5. Exclusionary zoning laws. The intricate network of municipal regulations known as exclusionary zoning laws sets forth the uses of land and the kinds of structures that are permitted to be erected in specific areas. These laws essentially marginalize multifamily housing options like duplexes, triplexes, and apartment complexes by giving preference to single-family homes. In the United States, single-family housing occupies approximately 70% of all residential land, making this zoning practice common in both suburban and urban areas. These laws have wide-ranging and significant effects. Exclusionary zoning raises prices and makes it harder for families with low or middle incomes to find affordable housing by restricting the kinds of homes that can be developed. This artificial scarcity in the housing market drives up prices. This scarcity becomes especially acute in high-demand neighborhoods where the cost of living is already higher, pushing many families to look for housing in less desirable areas that might be further away from their places of employment and other necessities. Because wealthier people can afford to live in neighborhoods with better schools, amenities, and services, while lower-income families are forced to settle in areas with fewer resources and opportunities, this not only undermines community cohesion but also contributes to social stratification. In addition, a concentration of single-family zoning may result in a lack of variety in housing options, which hinders communities' capacity to adjust to shifting economic and demographic circumstances, and ultimately stifles development and innovation. Number 4. Historical context of segregation. The legacy of racial and economic segregation in the U.S. is closely linked to the historical background of exclusionary zoning. Early in the 20th century, zoning laws were created as a tool to regulate land use and uphold social hierarchies, frequently in the name of advancing public safety and health. At first, these laws had explicitly discriminatory language intended to keep members of particular racial and ethnic groups out of particular neighborhoods, thereby enforcing segregation. For instance, racial restrictive covenants were put in place in many cities, making it expressly illegal for Black families and other minorities to buy or rent property in particular neighborhoods. Even though zoning codes no longer contain as much explicit language, these laws' effects are still felt today. Many neighborhoods with a high concentration of Black and low-income people are zoned for commercial or industrial uses, which restricts the amount of residential development possible and widens the economic divide. This historical background demonstrates how zoning laws have been used as a tool to maintain social hierarchies, leading to persistent systemic disparities in housing availability and neighborhood quality. The persistent gaps in housing opportunities, where marginalized communities are disproportionately impacted by restrictive zoning regulations, are a clear legacy of these practices. The end effect is a cycle of neglect and underinvestment in already troubled neighborhoods, which prolongs poverty and restricts the potential of locals to better their lot in life. In addition, impacted communities' mistrust of the government has been exacerbated by the historical link between zoning laws and racial discrimination, which makes reforming these laws and encouraging the development of equitable housing more difficult. This mistrust can show up as opposition to new housing developments because locals may worry that these developments will worsen already existing inequalities or cause gentrification, which would force out long-term residents. Number 3. Impact on housing supply and prices. Exclusionary zoning's restrictive characteristics directly and significantly affect the housing supply, driving up prices and creating a severe shortage of affordable housing. These regulations intensify the affordability crisis by restricting the kinds of housing that can be built, thereby creating an artificial scarcity in the marketplace. Prices have risen in tandem with the growing demand for housing, particularly in urban areas with strong job markets, frequently surpassing wage growth for many families. Due to this discrepancy, many people are forced to devote a disproportionate portion of their income to housing expenses, making it harder for even those with steady employment to afford housing. Studies reveal that eliminating restrictive zoning regulations in large cities could potentially stimulate the economy by almost 8%, underscoring the financial advantages of augmenting the housing stock. Furthermore, families are forced to stay in less desirable neighborhoods due to a lack of affordable housing options, and these neighborhoods frequently lack access to good healthcare, education, and employment opportunities. Because of this dynamic, families are unable to relocate to areas where they would have greater opportunities for upward mobility, which perpetuates cycles of poverty. Wide-ranging effects of the housing crisis include harm to individual families as well as to the general economic well-being of local communities, because families are forced to move frequently in search of affordable options, which disrupt their social networks and add to a sense of instability. A lack of affordable housing can result in an increase in homelessness, a strain on social services, and a decline in community stability. Furthermore, when properties are bought for quick profits rather than long-term habitation, the strain on the housing market may encourage speculative investments, which would raise prices and exacerbate the crisis. Number 2, restrictive building regulations. The construction industry is subject to strict regulations under many exclusionary zoning laws, which forbid multifamily housing, set minimum lot sizes, and restrict density. The housing crisis is exacerbated by these regulations, which essentially make it unlawful to build affordable housing in many neighborhoods. For example, zoning regulations in Franklin, Massachusetts require residential properties to have a minimum size of 2 acres, which limits the potential for creating affordable housing options. These limitations not only make it more difficult for developers to satisfy the growing demand for reasonably priced housing, but they also force prospective residents farther out from the city centers, which are hubs for amenities and employment. The cost and duration of commutes are raised as a result of this sprawl, further taxing low and middle-class families' finances. In addition, the dearth of diverse housing options in desired neighborhoods feeds inequality since only the wealthiest can afford to reside there, forcing others to settle for less desirable areas with limited resources and opportunities. These stringent building laws have the combined effect of creating a fragmented housing market that is unable to satisfy the demands of a diverse populace, thereby jeopardizing economic stability and community cohesion. Additionally, the emphasis on single-family homes frequently results in an excessive reliance on auto transportation, which worsens traffic conditions and degrades the environment by forcing families to travel farther for work and other necessities. This reliance on automobiles exacerbates problems associated with urban planning, such as aging public spaces and insufficient public transportation systems, in addition to raising greenhouse gas emissions. Number 1. Perpetuation of segregation. One of the main factors sustaining racial and economic segregation in housing markets is exclusionary zoning laws. These laws essentially force many Black and low-income families into less desirable neighborhoods that frequently experience disinvestment and lack access to basic services by erecting obstacles to the development of affordable housing. Families are denied access to better community resources, employment opportunities, and educational opportunities because they are unable to find affordable housing in affluent areas. This systemic problem emphasizes how urgently comprehensive zoning law reform is required to support equity and inclusivity in housing. Removing these obstacles is crucial to bringing down the cost of housing and guaranteeing that everyone, regardless of financial situation, has access to decent housing. Restructuring exclusive zoning can also lead to more diversity in neighborhoods and a more just society where everyone can prosper and give back to their communities. Changing the laws is not the only challenge. Communities that have historically opposed such changes must also change their way of thinking. This resistance is frequently rooted in a fear of losing property values or changing the character of the neighborhood. Misconceptions regarding the effects of affordable housing may be at the basis of this resistance to change, making outreach and education initiatives necessary to highlight the advantages of inclusive, diverse communities. More equitable housing policies and practices can be achieved by involving community stakeholders in conversations about the benefits of mixed-income neighborhoods, such as stronger local economies, increased social cohesion, and decreased segregation. Furthermore, effective case studies from other areas that have adopted inclusive zoning policies can be used as potent illustrations of the possible advantages of reform, fostering agreement and support for modifications that support the development of affordable housing and community integration. In order to address the larger issues of housing equity and affordability in America, it is imperative that we comprehend the complexities of exclusionary zoning. If you liked our video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel.